Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. Today, I have a guest on the show who is incredibly passionate about her craft. She was actually supposed to join us last week with Kendra, but couldn't make it. Honestly, though, I'm a little glad for that because we got a chance to focus directly on her and her journey, and it's a good one. Jessica Duquette is a Millwright Apprentice who spends her days in the mines. Funny story, she actually knew she was going to work in the mines all of her life. She even dressed as a miner when she was a kid to go trick-or-treating, as funny as that is. So tune in today to hear Jessica's story of how she never wavered in following her passion from a young age, and how her work today is providing her with a fulfilling and successful life of constant learning. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and on our website at blueisthenewwhite.com to receive all the latest updates. As always, this show is not monetized and we don't run ads. We rely strictly on the word of mouth from our listeners to further the mission. So if you enjoy this episode, please take a second to rate it, review it, and share it. Further generations of tradespeople depend on it. They depend on you. So thank you again and enjoy this episode of the Blue is the New White podcast with Jessica Duquette. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. I am here today with a friend of my last guest. If you didn't catch that episode, that was Kendra that I spoke to. And Jessica here was actually supposed to join us, but she was a little under the weather. So I caught her this week. And I'm super excited to have her on the show. She's a Millwright Apprentice. Jessica, welcome to the Blue is the New White podcast.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. I'm super excited to have this conversation and to learn all about you and how you got here. So why don't we start off by you telling me who you are, how you got to where you are today, where you're from, all that good stuff.
All right, so my name is Jessica Duquette. I'm from the greater Sudbury area. I grew up on a farm here in the Sudbury area. So I was around farming equipment basically my whole life, learning how to operate them and sometimes work on them depending on what it was. I went to my high school, had the a schism. It was specifically for mining, which was always...
What was that? It had a what? What did you call it?
A schism.
I've never heard that before.
I know it in French. I don't know what it means in English.
Oh, okay. That's a French word.
Yeah, well, I want to... It's like high schools, they have specialty programs. So the one that I had at my high school was specifically for mining. So if you wanted to go into the mining field, it would get you kind of ready for it. So it would give you basic training, working at heights and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Just to give you a little taste of what it was, to see if you liked it before you actually continued into that field,
Oh, wow. I had never heard of a high school having mining as an option like that. That's pretty cool. It must be a mining town, huh?
Oh, yeah. Sudbury is based off of mining, pretty much. Lots of mining history in Sudbury.
Okay. So in high school, you took this mining course?
Yeah. So, also with this program, I also took welding and all those shop classes, automotive. There was construction as well, which I loved. It was always the hands-on that I loved doing. Welding for sure. I like to draw a lot, so I find welding was kind of like drawing a little bit. That's why I enjoyed it that much. And I ended up passing with the highest grade in my class. And I was the only girl in that class. So I was pretty pumped about that.
Awesome. Nicely done.
Thanks. And finishing high school, I knew right away that I wanted to be a mechanic because I worked on a farm and I was already into that kind of stuff. I knew I wanted to be a mechanic, but not just like an automotive mechanic. I wanted to go in the mining industry because it was so big around my town here. And I was always like, I even went like trick-or-treating as a kid as the miner. Like I just loved everything about mining. So coming out of high school, I actually chose to take the Millwright course at my college here, Cambrian College. And not gonna lie, my first year, I wasn't sure if that's what I wanted to be. Like, yeah, it was mechanics, but it was more like industrial mechanics. Like you're working with conveyors and crushers and gearboxes and just big equipment like that. It's not like working on a small engine car or something like that. So, and school to me was never fun. So like now picture all of this together. I really wasn't sure if I wanted to continue with it. But during my 2-year program at Cambrian, I did a CoOp, a summer student position. I actually got hired on with Glencore for the summer as a Millwright Apprentice, like a student. And it's because of that, that's what sold me on it. That it was like the real world, the real deal. And just seeing how it actually is compared to school, I was like, oh yes, like I'm ready for this.
I'm glad you brought that up. What are the biggest differences between learning this stuff in a classroom and being out there in the real world doing it? Why did that, appeal to you more?
So, so like in college, like it's, you're just sitting in front of presentations and it's just books and like word after word, and then you go to do it and like you go to do like your tests or whatever it is. Like there's like you got your theory part, but then you also have your physical part where you actually have to go and do the job. Like you had to go fix pumps and stuff in school, but like this you don't know any of it when you're there. So like your teachers are expecting you to just remember what you learned in class, but like now go and do it. Where in the real like field, it's not like that. You're with your crew and your crew is there to tell you what to do, how it works. You're not just like trying to remember what you learned in class earlier that week. And like I'm not a fan of school. Like I really did not enjoy school, but I'm glad I finished it. Like in the real world, it's just like you also have like your crew to talk to, right? Like you're not alone working on something. It's just you get to see like everything running. It's not like, all these pumps and stuff, they're all running. You get to see how it works. You get to see the whole process. You get to learn about it. Where like comparing to school, it's just like, here's a pump that somebody donated to the school.
Yeah.
Fix it.
I completely understand what you're saying. I really do, because it's, school a lot of time, most of the time, like 98% of the time, doesn't set us up for the real world and how, people behave, how environments are anticipated, how how we work together, right? I mean, simplest example, right, is that in school, if you look over at somebody's answers, it's considered cheating, right? And you'll fail. Where you just said, listen, in the real world, you get to work with a crew. Everybody's giving everybody else the answers if they have it. I mean, it's completely different, right? So I completely understand that. So let's pause here for a second, and I want to back up a little bit and ask you a little more about your high school career. So you had this, or you took this schism, and for mining, you did welding, you did auto, you did construction. Was this, you said you were the only girl in the welding class. Is that right?
Yes.
Was that the only class that you were the only one, or was it a lot of these other trades as well?
Actually, I think I was the only girl for all of those shop classes.
And what was that like? I mean, as far as was there any resistance? Was there anybody like, hey, why are you here kind of thing?
Not really. So for me, in my classes, it was all of my close friends and that I grew up with, basically. But I did have a teacher that would always think I needed more help than everybody else, but I didn't really need the help. You know, like he like I can do it on my own, but he was like, just let me show you a little trick. And I'm like, okay.
Oh man, that's funny. So, and you said, so you knew from a very young age that you wanted to be in mining. You said you were trick-or-treating as a miner, going door to door, no pun intended, right? And and so that's something that you were drawn to immediately, which is wild. So was there ever any talks about college? Was anybody trying to get you to go to college? I mean, as far as like university, right? Was anybody trying to get you to go to university or anything like that? Or was it because it was such a mining town that all of this kind of stuff was just accepted, and you know, the push for university wasn't as big as it is in other areas?
So for me, my dad he still works in the mining industry. So he was like he would come home, tell me all his stories and stuff like that. Nobody really pushed me towards university, and I knew for a fact that I wasn't going to university either. I had no interest in it. It was just too long for me, you know. For somebody who doesn't really enjoy school, like I looked for something that would take like no time to finish, but also something that I would love and enjoy. But I did have my dad try to convince me to do maybe like an electrician in the mining industry. Try doing stuff like that way. But it's like I knew I wanted to be a mechanic. I didn't really care what kind of mechanic. Like, to me, being a mechanic just sounds awesome, and I love doing it also. So now.
So why was he trying to get you to be like an electrician or?
So this was before I actually knew what a millwright was. I had no idea millwright was a thing. So him trying to get me into the mining industry, that was his like, hey, how about you try electrician? You know, like we need electricians underground or on like at the smelter or something like that. Like you need them everywhere you go. And it was just to encourage me into like some options, but I knew right away that wasn't going to happen.
Oh, wow. Well, first off, it sounds like you have a cool dad.
Oh, I do.
You know, he sounds super supportive.
Yes.
That's awesome. You know, because I got to say, you're my 119th guest on this show, and there's a lot of people out there that don't have that luxury. There's a lot of people out there that their parents didn't really understand, you know, why they wanted to get into the trades and tried to push them one direction or another. And, you know, so it's, I don't want to say it's rare, but it kind of is, you know. And listen, it's always done with the best of intent, right? The parents always want what's best for their kids. Just some of them are less willing to admit that they may not know what's best.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So that's cool. So you knew you wanted to be a mechanic. And so what about that? Why did you know you wanted to be a mechanic? Was it just about working with your hands and like just building something? Was it the gears, the grease? You know, what was it?
So for me, it's a little bit of everything you just said, but mechanic. So I like working with my hands. First of all, I like taking stuff apart to see how it works, put it back together, see if there's different ways of doing it. I was also really good in physics in high school, and you definitely need to know your physics for mechanic, especially industrial mechanic, where you're using cranes and leverage and stuff like that all the time on a daily basis.
Wait, you mean mechanics aren't just for big dumb dummies?
No.
Is that what you're saying? That's what I think I heard. Because that's a common narrative that we hear, right? Is that the skilled trades, a lot of them, especially mechanics, actually, you hear terms thrown around like grease monkey and stuff like that, and it's a little bit. There's a perception floating around out there that, hey, if you're not smart enough to do something else, you can always be a mechanic, which is just obviously people who listen to the show and who know me, that's bullshit. I mean, for lack of a better term. So anyway, I just like to point that out. So good to know you need physics for mechanics.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Sorry, I interrupted you. You were telling me what you loved about being a mechanic.
Yes. Well, also, I loved like getting my hands dirty. Also, like even now today, like usually by the end of my shifts, I am filthy, like covered. Like I have to shower before I go home because you're just black. You're filled with grease. You're filled with like nickel dust or copper dust, stuff like that. And to me, that it's almost like rewarding because like now everybody sees you dirty like that and they're like, wow, like you worked hard today, did you? I'm like, yes, I did. Every day I do. And it's just to prove to people like I'm here to work, like I want to be involved as much as possible, just like you, like, pass me the tools or I'll go do it, So it's really, I like being dirty, covered in grease because it shows a lot for other people, especially people who don't encourage us in the trades. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I get what you're saying. There's a lot of satisfaction that comes from a hard day's work, and there's a lot of accomplishment. Not only can others see that too when you're caked with grease, right? But you feel it yourself. You look in the mirror and beyond a shadow of a doubt that you put in an honest day's work.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pride in that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So let's circle back. So you did the co-op for Glencore, right? As a Millwright Apprentice, you got out there, you started working with your crew, and you kind of, that's when you went into the differences between the class work and real work, right out there in the field. So take me to the next step. What happened then after you did this co-op and you got out there and you started to see what a Millwright Apprentice actually was about?
So actually, like getting into that environment was, first of all, it was surprising because everybody was very friendly right off the bat. Like it's like they had faith right off the bat. So right there, just always having people supporting you was great. But also everything that I learned, like there's so many things you work on. You're never done learning. Like every day is just different. It can be different pieces of equipment or different ways to fix something or even different people. You see different people every day, contractors or whatnot.
Repetition, I think, can be the biggest reason for people getting burned out, right? And that's why we typically see burnout in like an office setting, right, where people are punching spreadsheets all day, staring at the same screen every day, saying hello to the same people every day, the same way every day, drinking the same thing every day, eating the same thing every day, that's what leads to burnout. And quite honestly, I feel like that's what makes life seem so short sometimes, when we're able to put ourselves on autopilot, right? And just kind of go through the motions hour after hour, day after day. Whereas in an environment like you're talking about, it sounds like there's a lot of variation. There's one day you could be doing one thing, the next day you could be doing another thing, and you never get to experience that repetition too much, right? You get to focus on your morning routine, your evening routine, everything in the middle is subject to change. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's cool. So is that what you're doing now? No, you went from that to doing something else, right?
So, okay, so after my co-op, I went and finished that was in between my 2 years of college. So I had another year before I graduated. So once I graduated, I actually didn't get hired on as a Millwright Apprentice right away. I actually got hired on with a contracting company, and I was working underground. I was doing dust suppression for them. So what it was, first of all, it was my first underground job. It was my foot in the door to get some sort of experience to keep moving forward. But what it was just basically water lines that ran throughout the whole mine. And I had to maintain that system and install new systems. Like I had to install panels and program these panels with timers and buttons and whatnot. There was like filter canisters that weighed quite a bit. I honestly think they were like 70, 80 pounds. Empty, like that's not filled with water. And these filter bags that were in it honestly were as tall as me there, or it maybe like 4 feet long, but they were pretty big. And especially when they're clogged and they're full of water, like that's super heavy, right? But and not just that, like also underground, everything's a tight squeeze. So these water lines would run around the walls every like 40 to 60 feet and had like a spray nozzle at the end, which would spray out water to keep the dust down from underground. And because it's such a tight space, people are constantly driving into these hoses and breaking them. And if you got one hose broken, that whole system is down because the water is just pouring out of this one hose that's been cut off. So, and this was like throughout the whole mine, I had to do lots of running around. I had one partner, and it was just me and him. That's it. We were on call, and like we had to work around everybody. We had to shut down the ramps to stop all the trucks and whatnot so we can fix all this, because if it gets too dusty underground, then like by law you can't work. It's too dusty, you can't breathe, it's not the proper work environment. So, and then that's a huge issue. We got to shut down the mine. That's not good.
Ooh, so that's a lot of pressure.
It is. It really, especially for my first job, and I only had one partner. I didn't have a cross shift or nothing like that. Yeah. And then if he called in sick, I didn't have really anybody to help me. So I was on my own doing this.
It's all you. Wow.
Yeah, and it was crazy.
Wow, that's heavy for a first job. That's heavy.
And I did that for about 1.5 years before I got a call from Valet.
All right, before we get into that, I got a question.
Yes.
So this being your first job, I mean, you painted a pretty vivid picture there. I mean, it sounds stressful. It sounds, it sounds important, obviously, and it sounds like you had a lot of weight on your shoulders for that. So I'm curious, what did you learn from that job?
I learned a lot. I learned how to prioritize jobs. I learned how to communicate throughout the whole mine, or just with supervisors for the next shift, saying like what was down or what stuff like that. I learned how to create parts lists. I learned to not stress out over everything because it was nonstop. Honestly, there's no point of stressing because it was impossible to do everything all in one night. I learned how to manage time. Oh my
That's
goodness.
a lot of stuff. You can stop there. That's a lot. That's a lot of stuff. I mean, that's great though, because that's exactly what I was asking, right? Because one of the things, especially for a first job, right? That's super impactful on somebody. But these are all, I mean, the list that you just laid out for me is, I consider a lot of them fundamentals for success. I mean, how to prioritize anything, right? Is an incredibly transferable skill that you can use not only in every other job that you have, but in your personal life as well. How to communicate, same thing, right? I'm a big proponent of that. When I was out in the field and I had to communicate certain things with customers who may not understand what I was trying to say, because why would they? But it made me a better communicator because I would have to explain like 3 or 4 different times, what I'm trying to get across. And then, of course, I think managing time is important. And the big one that I took away from there is not stressing. Stress is a huge, huge proponent of just modern day anything, right? In this day and age, especially. So if you can be put in a stressful position at that young of an age and learn how to navigate it and conclude, that there's really no point in stressing. Like that's something that took thousands of years for philosophers to land on, and you learned it in a mine. So, I think that's super important, and that's a huge takeaway of some of the skills and some of the things that work like this can teach us. So that was long-winded. I know. I'm sorry, but
No, that's all right.
all right. So moving forward, you were there for 1.5 years, and then you got a call.
Yes. So I had gotten a call from Valet saying that they were interested in hiring me as a Millwright Apprentice. So obviously I went for it. And that was pretty interesting. It was like a three interview process. It was like 2 interviews I had to do with and it was during like COVID, so it was through Zoom. And there was like 3 people I had to at the same time talk to. And it was like in between interviews, it was about a month or so before you even heard anything. If you move to the next step, right? And then I had gotten a second interview, which went very well. And it was just to see how I deal with stressful situations, how I, how do I communicate with people, or how do I deal with people, stuff like that, right? And then the third part to that interview was actually a physical. So as a millwright, male or female, you need to be able to lift heavy stuff. So what I had to do was they had set up weights in a milk crate, and then they started you off at 50 pounds. They made you pretend as if you're putting that 50-pound part on a shelf a couple times, and then it would go up to 100 pounds, and then it went up to 150 pounds. And I had to lift this, I had to walk with this, and just to prove to them that, okay, this pump weighs 150 pounds, I have to show them that I can safely move this pump, safely put the parts on the shelf, like stuff like that. Even afterwards, I had to run on a treadmill with a heart monitor on and run for about like 10 minutes roughly to see my heart rate, to see like, okay, so if she's like working hard, like
that's
how
a stress
fast is
test.
her? Oh yeah, like basically, actually.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, honestly, I was exhausted. My legs were killing me the next day.
I bet.
Oh, and I also forgot, there's another part to that. Then the next day was a medical I had to go through. So here, like, they checked out my lungs, they check your hearing, they check your vision. They make sure, like, if you're sick or whatever it might be, they need to know about it. They need to document it because working in the mining industry can be very dangerous, hazardous, and it can create some health issues down the line. So they need to keep track of that, right? They need to, her hearing is within this range now at this age, this year. Now, a couple of years from now, they send you out for another hearing test to see the difference on my hearing, and they need to document that. And what I have is, they're called DB blockers. So they're earbuds molded to your ear, and it fits your ear perfectly, and it blocks out all the high-pitched noises. So like you and me can still talk, I can hear us clearly, but all the loud noise in the background, I won't hear it. It's really neat, but it's like to that extent though. Like,
wow.
It's nothing to play around with. Even like breathing, like they sent you for x-rays to see your lungs, and they listen to your breathing, and then they send you out again later on and see if there's any changes or stuff like that. And I work with a lot of nickel dust and copper dust, like copper, like concentrate, stuff like that. So sometimes people can react to this. It's they call it nickel rash, but that's not really a thing. It'd be like dermatitis, kind of.
Sure.
That idea. But like, it's happened though. Like, it's not fun. It's all stuff you need to report. You need to keep track of these things because it can affect you long term. It's no joking matter, right?
Wow. That's
and that's just the interviews. That's just the
I know. I was just gonna say that's just the interview. Unreal.
That's not even like your site specific in doc or nothing like that. Like, it's a huge process, honestly, but I love it.
Wow. Okay, so that's a lot to go through, right? And so you better love it, I guess. So what are you doing now? Like day to day, what are you doing for valet in what you do?
So I am now officially, I'm a third period Millwright Apprentice. So I'm about halfway done my apprenticeship. I work at the smelter here, more specifically matte processing. Matte is just, that's the money there. That's what you want.
Got it.
And so at matte processing, I work on a lot of stuff. I actually just started there because I was underground. And part of my apprenticeship, you have to have underground and surface experience. So I just got to matte processing. But I work on like conveyor belts. I work on pumps. I work on, like I said, like motors, gearboxes, thickener tanks, separation, flotations, a lot of pipe work I do also. I use the crane often enough. Before I went to the smelter, I was underground, and underground is totally different, obviously. But a lot of liner work. I don't know if you are familiar with that, but liners is just it's something that's bolted. It's metal that's bolted to the frame to protect the framework because of all the ore that passes through the crusher and all that stuff. So it was a lot of like maintenance like that, just to make sure everything was not make sure everything was working properly and in good condition before, preventative maintenance. Torches, I do welding. Torches, I actually really love doing. You're cutting metal with fire, which I find pretty cool.
Who doesn't love that, right?
I love it. I don't know. I'm weird like that.
I don't think that's weird at all. I think that's pretty badass, and I think that there's a ton of people out there that are like, oh yeah, I could definitely cut metal with fire. That's a thing. Oh, yeah. Sign me up. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, that's awesome. So where do you go from here? Right. What's next for you? Do you have a goal? Do you have other visions in your head of where you want this to take you?
So, once I'm done my apprenticeship and I accumulated all of my hours, I have to write my Red Seal exam to become a certified millwright mechanic. So that is definitely my goal for now. And to eventually get back underground, because underground, I think that's where I was meant to be. It's just so crazy that I love it.
Oh, that's awesome. What about long term? Is this, you're doing this podcast with me. Is this, something that you want to advocate for? Is this, or do you just love it so much that you don't care who knows? You just want to do this the rest of your life?
No, I definitely want to encourage people into trying it out, trades, like more specifically like children, like youth, high schoolers. I want to show them that it's not as scary as what it seems to be. It's really not. Yeah, it's a lot's going on, but you get used to it. I definitely want to show that we can do it, not just specifically women, but like everyone can do it. As long as you put your mind into it, you can do it. There's different ways of doing stuff. So it's not like you don't need to stress out about not being able to do something, because there's more than one way of doing it. You just got to learn. You got to figure it out. Like I said, use leverage, use a crane or something. If you can't lift it, you get creative with it. But I definitely would love to share my story with children, to encourage them into at least looking into it, trying it out, make it sound as interesting as possible, because it is awesome. I highly, highly recommend it, honestly.
Well, you've done an awesome job of that on this show, I'll tell you that. So on that same topic then, do you have any advice for kids out there about trying out a trade, or specifically this trade? What would you say to them?
So I would have to say is to never give up. Like, honestly, like I said, sometimes you show up to your job site and something like a pump blew up and parts are everywhere, and you're like, oh my God, like what a mess this is. Like, then you got to go and lock everything out. Like, it looks intimidating, but just take your time, never give up. There's more than one way of doing stuff. Like me, I'm short. I'm 5'3", so reaching stuff is like hard sometimes for me. I got to get like a step stool or something. But also me being like my size, I'm good for like confined spaces or small areas. My hands fit into places where maybe their hands won't fit. So guess what? Like that's my role for that job, like never give up, because there's a role for everyone, big or small, weak or tough, it's to figure it out, and you're gonna fail a few times, and that's normal, because that's part of learning. That's part of your experience. It's part of it. You have to fail and know where you went wrong to keep moving forward. And like by never giving up, also, it's the only way to move forward. If you give up, that's it. Like there's no going forward with it.
That's the only true failure, right? Is when you give up.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, you're just learning.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, very, very good. So I have one more question for you. I talk a lot on this show about success, right? And I'm a big advocate for, listen, you can't group everybody into the same conversation of what success is. Everybody has their own definition of what it means to them. My version of success is different than your version of success, is different from all of the listeners' versions of success. And I happen to think that the skilled trades are an unbelievable way to pursue however you define that version. So I'm always curious with all my guests how you define success personally.
For me, success, I would have to say is definitely like is learning. Like success is to keep pushing through, like the pain and the sweat to get the job done, or like if you learned something that day, that was a successful day. You figured out how to do something, to me that's success. When you start proving people wrong, that's success to me. And at that point, you get people who respect you more, you get people who support you more, back you up, stuff like that. So to me, success, that's what that is.
Plus, you get to tell them, told you so.
Exactly.
That doesn't hurt. That doesn't hurt, right?
Exactly.
No, I love that answer. I think that's awesome. Success is learning, perseverance, and proving people wrong, proving yourself right, really.
Mm-hmm.
That's
yes.
No, that's really wonderful. All right, great. So we're going to move to wrap up the show, but before we do, where can people find you?
So you can find me. I have a shared Instagram account with Kendra, actually. It's Millwright-ish _chicks. Because we're not quite there yet, but we're working towards it.
I love that handle, by the way. I love that. I love that name. That's awesome.
Also, we are with a company called Kick-Ass Careers. You can also find us there. Just Google Kick-Ass Careers, and it'll bring you to the main page with all of our whole team on there. So, and everybody's bio is on there as well. And I highly recommend checking it out, taking a good read. It's very interesting.
I can vouch for that too. I've talked to a lot of the Kick-Ass Careers people over there, and you guys are all awesome. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but great cause, great people, and that's really an unbelievable organization. So, Jessica, thank you for spending your valuable time talking with me today. I know that our listeners are going to absolutely love it. So just 1,000 thanks for coming on the show and sharing your story.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me. This was such an awesome opportunity. Couldn't say no to it.
Well, I appreciate it. And maybe we'll have to do another one in a year or two to kind of document the journey and see where you're at. All right.
Sounds good.
All right, Jessica, take care. Okay.